All right, welcome to Lunch and Learn. My first question is, does this need a new name? If it's a good name, that's awesome, although sometimes we can't do it at lunch. I went ahead and decided to do it on my own today. Thor's feeling a little bit under the weather, so not on charts at all or talking much, but I wanted to go ahead and hit some tickers for you guys. So if you have a name suggestion, please tag me in Market Talk. I am open to it. It just happened to be how it landed before, and I'm not attached to much other than getting you guys good content. So purpose of this stream is to teach how we look at higher time frames to really kind of dig in a little bit more to what looking at that bigger picture looking left is. So we usually dedicate this to chart requests from members. I opened it up on FXI because we had a pretty big discussion about China tickers and some pretty big flow that we saw. And I opted not to go in with it. And we can see this gap down today is one of the reasons why I'm really, really cautious trading China in general, but following something just because there's flow. So if you're wanting to see my stream, you do have to make sure, if you're wanting to watch both of them, you can pop out the 30-minute ES execution chart that I have up with the live stream user on Discord. So I have two users in here to be able to stream two separate charts. You can watch both of them at the same time. You would want to pop it out and put them over into a tile if you want to keep your eye on that, if you happen to be using those levels. So moving into the Lunch and Learn thread now, looks like the only request that I see right now is Apple, more for swings than long term. So not looking at long term. A lot of times I look at these as, is this a potential long term investment? So I definitely appreciate that. And I do have 30 minutes put aside for this session each week. And of course, if you have chart requests and things like that, I'm usually around unless I'm actively in a trade, a day trade, and the rest of our staff is really good at that as well. So you can just tag @analyst and @trusted trader and you'll get charts galore, I promise. But we're going to move over to Apple now. So welcome to those of you who are new to Market Mastermind. We are just starting our server up as far as transition from our old server, which unfortunately is no more, or fortunately, I guess, for us. So got things nice and streamlined now. But what we really look at is how we can help members learn how to chart. And so anytime you see this white candle chart, I've used this for charting previously. So if I see a bunch of levels like this and I'm like, I don't know, haven't thought about this chart in this perspective for a while, I'm going to go in and hide drawings. So you can hide indicators and hide drawings. You can hide all, so you just see the candles. And one of the reasons I really like this chart in particular is because of it takes the emotion out to not have any of the red and green on it. And I've tried changing my candle colors to purple and pink and blue and orange and all different colors. I like them on other people's charts. I can't read them. I can't react to them myself. So in a way that I deem effective because of how I've traded for so long using just this either red and green or white candle. So you want to make sure that you're not just changing up your chart candle colors because you want to be fancy, but because they're effective and you see things well. So just zooming out on this high time frame, we see, right, a gap up. I'm going to go out to daily and go back to how I would start this analysis now. So I'm going to turn on indicators. I'm not going to turn on the levels. Apparently not. We're going to have everything, and then we'll go back to turning off drawings. There we go. Okay, so on a monthly time frame, the things that stick out to me are this volume point of control. This is using the VR. Really, I can't even talk today. I don't even know if I should be doing this, something like that. VRVP, visible range, volume profile. I use the PVP, which is periodic volume profile, for the monthly and the higher. So the PVP is on monthly on this one, and that is showing the profile for these individual candles and they're more helpful for me on the daily and the weekly, but that gives you an idea. I can see value area high, volume point of control, value area low. Value area low on May, which is a fairly new month, is down at the volume point of control that's visible in this range. So the VRVP is affected by how you move this chart. If you zoom out and put more candles on, it's going to change what the data is going into this chart. You can see it re-rendering there. So we want to be careful that we're not putting too much or too little. I really like to see when we're in a monthly time frame, everywhere that we've traded at the price range we're trading at, it is less relevant previously as far as that's old money. The new money seems to still be reacting to these levels is the thing that I pay attention to. It's funny, I was just on a Zoom session and I asked her, can you hear the chickens in the background? And she's like, no, not at all. And I thought maybe I should record these on Zoom instead because I don't know. I get comments all the time. I have about, I think 30 chickens right now. I don't know, give or take. And we counted 9 goats. So there is occasional barnyard sounds randomly. So my apologies. Hope they're not too distracting. Okay. So out to the fact that we have the 10 moving average holding on the monthly. I love the 10 moving average on all time frames. I'm not going to pay too much attention to that until we get to weekly. And now I can pull my levels back on and see what my previous levels were and see if any of them have changed. So how I mark these is on the daily time frame. I have marked all of these white, so they're from the daily. If they're blue, they'd be from the weekly, and if they're purple, they're from the monthly. So as I'm looking at these, I'm finding I don't love that one on the weekly, but I do love this one, so I'm going to change the color. And this way I can quickly identify it when I run over to the chart. Other weekly, I love that one because that's our volume point of control, flipping that over to blue. So this is actually a good rundown on how I will go back and edit a chart that I've previously marked up. And some people will just go delete all their lines. I like to see what my TA looked like before. I don't want to let it affect my decisions now, but definitely did it pan out? And Thor was talking about last week. I think it would be interesting for sure to come back in and maybe 3 weeks later, come back and just double check how did our analysis do? And there's a lot of times we're not trading the individual tickers, so we don't really look at them again because they are member requests. Seeing a few little adjustments here. And there's one from the monthly. I'm not moving that one because I don't have everything visible. Okay, so Apple for swings. Not for long term. If we're just looking at the trading channel itself, we have a broadening formation from a weekly perspective. Need to change that setting. Because of these 2 points right here, so we've got the weekly, and I actually don't like where they're snugged up. That's interesting. TradingView is a little funny in how it attaches them. It can look like they're perfect on one time frame, and then I get down to daily or even 4 hour. If I wanted to be a little more laser precise, although I'm careful not to be, think about, even though I've got a 1 point drawing on each of these charts, I try to think of it like a very wide highlighter. So it's in the range. And I know a lot of people use, I don't know, rectangles, whatever, to mark them. I know that I need to be aware of this downtrend. This is serious overhead resistance to me. We've got a weekly level at 184 and at 182. So I would be looking from a buy the dip perspective, I'd be looking for a mean reversion back to this volume point of control in the 170s. And we know 169 to 171, so the 170 range, just from having traded it or watched it, as the case may be, that you would be really wanting to look for an entry. You want to look for a dip. If we get down into like 163 to 165 range, then I would be very interested. I would probably be looking at taking some longer dated swings, maybe some commons positions if that's what you're trading. If you were going to trade it now, it's looking a little bit more short, but I don't short Apple. And that's just how I trade. So we pay attention to Apple from a technical perspective, at least for me. because it does affect so much of how the market moves, but not because we trade it. So look for a pullback. We want a viable pullback. We have earnings coming up. So we had a dividend. Was that this week? Yep. Let me take it out to daily now so we can zoom in a little bit more. So I use moving averages because everyone uses moving averages. I'm going to take VRVP off now that I'm zoomed in a little bit more. I really care about the volume profile on the monthly, but because I have taken this chart and narrowed it down so much, the visible range is no longer relevant and it actually distracts me a little bit. So what I look at is make sure my attachment points are correct. This one is still, my snap is not working at all apparently. Yeah, anyway. You have to be careful if they're not direct, that ray coming out can get really off very far in the future. So looking at the moving averages, I will never go long on anything as far as longer swings or things like that, unless it's a mean reversion kind of trade, and we can go into that in other times. I talk about it quite a bit, but the 200 moving average is my white moving average. And I'll make sure that as I'm continuing to set up the tools channel, that all of that is denoted. But if you want to do just quick rundown, I think we have this from last week as well. White is the 200, purple is the 100, blue is the 50, orange is the 20, and turquoise is the 10. So as long as we hold the 200 on a daily close, then it's not probably going to sell off fairly hard. If we lose the 200 on a daily close and don't confirm it, then you still have to be careful short. If we close and we're threatening to at least test it into that 181.87, if we close below the 100 daily moving average, your downside target is the 50 daily moving average on a high point. So that's the 200 and the 50. It's very popular. If I were to take it short underneath the 200, would be targeting that 10 moving average on a daily close. So close underneath the 200. The next day doesn't just immediately pop back up. It's going to run through our low volume node area, and I mark low volume. This was marked on the daily, but with a dashed line, so that's how I know very quickly. I don't have to zoom back out and double check. I code it for myself. So I know that there's a little bit of resistance here, and you can see that by the candle bodies, but I don't draw it off the candle bodies and wicks because volume is more important, especially when we get into the last 2 months worth of trade. The 10 moving average is where I would see that 174.16 is of particular interest. And of course that will adjust on the daily as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and screen capture this. If you guys have any other tickers, I haven't looked back in the channel, so I don't even know if there's anything in there. It doesn't look like it. So anything else, or this will just be a quick intro to how I do the lunch and learn. And usually Thor and I just go back and forth and tag team. So maybe this is our good way to have the intro to lunch and learn in general, or whatever its new name is if we do that. So Apple Daily. $174.16. All right. Oh, I'm in Market Talk now, seeing a post from Win. I'm glad I checked over there. Thank you. So Credit Wayne wants to know about Win. Talk about a tongue twister. Might get myself in trouble there. Since they have earnings after hours and numbers link to when everyone was in Vegas for Super Bowl. I'll tell you what, that's an under talked about metric. How much money is being spent in Vegas? All right, and I see Google from Sam. And I'm catching them, but if we're moving quick through multiple tickers, it is much better to put those in the lunch and learn thread in the meantime, just because they do get lost. Actually traded Win quite a bit in the past, but not lately. Okay, so out on monthly, quick view, I'm going to turn on my visible range volume profile again. Not lately, and that is why. Oh, do have a decent little diamond formation. Yeah. We've been in this range for so long. Okay. I do have a boot camp that goes into looking at higher time frames as far as moving averages that are more important. The monthly moving average that really is important for me is this 50, this blue down here. So the fact that we got bought back up, we're halfway back, or I call it half back through the previous month's candle, is good, but it's a weak candle because of the top wick. So I'm not even super interested in drawing lines on it on the monthly. I'm going to go weekly. I want to give it, because we've traded in this range so long, I am going to give it a little bit more time. I'm going to catch into 2018. So we can see the importance of this volume point of control. So I'm going to go in. So this is how I mark up a fresh chart. I actually like how this is panning out. I top tick all of those high volume nodes. And you have to be careful because you end up with like high volume nodes everywhere. I'm going to go in and maybe catch some other high nodes from a lower time frame. But right now I think about it like a Christmas tree. You put the star at the top, or like a Christmas tree, as you're putting garland on, you're catching the branches that stick out so that the garland hangs from them, just for areas of interest. And like I said, a lot of people use the candle bodies. I care about where volume transacted in general until we get to monthly. Then I'll look at candle bodies and wicks if I have some question about volume. So pretty low volume up there. I'm going to add one more. I moved it. That's where the VRVP, you have to be careful not to go right, left. Okay. Give myself one more heads up. I think we're going to get some daily levels in there, but that's a good start. So now moving over to, actually let's look at moving averages on weekly. 200 moving average on weekly is really important. If we lose the 200 on the weekly, what's happened back here? And it basically slid down the 10 all the way. So that's the turquoise. So we want to watch the fact that we had a weekly wick down here. Gives me a little bit more comfort in thinking that there's a potential that we could bounce here. However, I don't know if you guys have been out in the economy much. I'm guessing you have. When they talk about there's no recession, the people that I talk to are in a recession by and far. And I'm not surrounded by a bunch of traders, and I'm, I'm talking about a cross section of people working regular jobs, doing regular things in life, are in a recession and are definitely in what I've been talking about for a year and a half, the lipstick economy. Even if they're not going to go out and spend $200 on dinner, they'll still, go to the medium range fast food places and spend 40 or 50, and they definitely buy lipstick. Even when things are really tight, they're buying lipstick. So that's a term from way back when. But paying attention to that, how much money was spent in Vegas, it concerns me a little bit. And that's just my personal take on it because I haven't looked at any of those metrics. So I'm going to draw some trend lines on this now. I like horizontal lines. I think they're much stronger than trend lines. But once I start to see something like that, I go, oh, what are you doing over there? So looking at it from an eyeball perspective, I want to have as many contact points as I possibly can. And now we have a symmetrical triangle, which is indecision, which is the other side of that diamond pattern I was talking about. But I have a feeling, and I mean, I guess we could play with this and say, I don't like hindsight charting, so I want to see these three contact. Ugh. It might give us a little bit more range, but I don't have 3 points of contact, where on the bottom I do. So I'm going to go ahead and go on this wick right here on the weekly. I didn't know these other wicks were coming, and then might adjust it to this third one and say, okay, there's my interaction. So there's my triangle. If we can't close this weekly and have continuation over, we've seen rejections, we've seen wicks over, but anytime it closed over, it immediately sold back in. So if we can't close a weekly that the next week goes green pretty quick, we're very likely to come back down and finish this pattern down, and possibly, sometime at the end of the year, which would make a lot of sense since we're in an election cycle year, to kind of just grind sideways still in this range. So for me, this is not a tradable. It's not. If you're into trading maybe run-ups to earnings or want to be more speculative about it, but if I were looking to take this long-term to add because it's underrepresented in my portfolio or something along those lines, I would have to go look at daily and decide where we are in relation to that 200 before I'd even consider. I'm going to turn off my visible range volume profile. Okay. Actually, even going to turn off the monthly volume profile. I want to just have those moving averages so they're a little more visible as we zoom into this. So now we have the levels we drew on the weekly. We see that when we sold underneath the 200 daily moving average, there was a pretty quick turnaround before we even got to the volume from the weekly that we put in. So there was some short covering in there, and you really have to ask yourself, and I talk about this a lot because I don't like shorting as much as I like long. And those who've been trading ES with me for a while know that I do short, but they're harder to execute because you don't know how short someone is and when they're going to start covering. And this is a great example of that. We know that there's more volume underneath there. They came in and started front running once they got underneath that 10 or the 200 moving average because they're worried about that having continuation. So I would look for what happens in relation to earnings today. Oh, that's right. You did say that. And then make a determination after that. So this is one of those where you could do a very small speculative, like 0.5% position size or something like that. If you feel like maybe people are traveling to Vegas instead of traveling to Europe. And that's some way to look at it. If we talk about the lipstick economy, they're not taking 2 weeks in Spain, but they're like, we could go to Vegas for a week. That cost me about $5,000 compared to 25 grand. It's less money. So all different ways that I would approach that. So I will post that link. I'm going to post it inside Lunch and Learn so we can go back and find it. And I think I will tag, so that one is from Wayne. And my 10:30 a.m. call just texted me and told me they're going to have to reschedule to 11. So I can do this a little bit longer. However, typically all these tickers that I'm seeing, and I love seeing this stuff from you guys, I would have to I would have to wait and just, instead of narrate them recorded, just do them on voice later and put the charts up. So if you can get them for me ahead of time, I would love, love, love it. Even if it's right at the start of the session. What's nice is if I see that there's 10 or 12 tickers, we'll do the intro and then we'll run through them and give the information on each one, but we will move through them faster. So there's different ways we run the education of the sessions based on how many tickers we have coming into it. All right. Next one is Google for Sam. Such a beautiful monthly chart. It's like magic, except for that top wick right there. But it is very, very technical. So it looks like I have some levels to potentially adjust here. So that's the first thing I'll look at is, do I have anything? Well, I just apparently had a little internet blip. All my screens just refreshed. Okay. This weekly that I put was on a lower time frame. So I'm going to add VRVP as a purple. And so 136.72, 141.50 are the big volume underneath here. So I'm going to adjust this weekly down just a little bit. I like it down better there. And that is because I'm on the monthly. I set that one on the weekly, but looking at this interaction here, candle body, candle body, candle body, I just really like that level, and it was slightly off in my eyes. That's why zooming out, looking at different times is really a good idea. Now flip out to weekly now and go, okay, we're in price discovery mode now. And you have to be careful getting too little data on screen. So I'm not going to change this purple because I know on a high time frame we've been there for longer, but I want to look and see what the interaction is. Even though it's not our highest volume, it is important. Candle body, candle body, candle body, wick. Once we get down to daily time frame, I don't care about, I want just the wicks. I want the full actual top to bottom price action. Okay, now we're going to find some white lines to drop in. So actually, I want to look at our, got a little range up here. And sometimes when you get zoomed, where I call them tall candles or scary candles because they're really big, and you're like, wait, you're looking on a 1 minute time frame and you're like, what's that big candle? And it was 12 cents. So changing what that perspective is helps me identify where these other volume nodes can potentially pop up. There is almost no volume in here, so I'm going to drop. I'm actually, because it's so much of a low volume area, I'm going to put 2 dash lines. So we're doing them on the, not quite yet. We're not to weekly yet. We're not to daily. Wow. So when I'm zoomed in more and things start to get a little bit more adventurous, as far as if we do see a pullback, I know that, yes, I can look, there is an imbalance on the weekly time frame between there, but I didn't identify it from the candles. I identified it from the volume, because volume is king. And that's one thing you're going to hear Thor say all the time. I say it. It's everything that I have on my charts is volume based, with the exception of the Fu Manchu cipher, which I use as my oscillator. But everything else, anchored VWAP, visible range volume profile, periodic volume profile. Oh, if you're looking at ES right now, we're losing the IB high that I was talking about earlier. So we want to see the interaction at the overnight high. Okay, now I'm going to drop some more solid lines in, a little bit closer. So solid is high volume nodes. Dashed is area of interest, usually for me a low volume node. And that gives me the time frame. Yeah, actually. This is probably the 155.99. We could round to 160. Probably going to end up with a line on it for white for daily, but we'll see what that looks like when we get there. And a couple of months for me on the daily is usually good when we're in price discovery. We've not traded up here at all, so I really don't need to have, this is a good look at all-time highs. So dropping in what we have as the highest volume node before we reach all-time highs. 172.07 is kind of a tough area to get through. That's where we saw all of this selling on that enormous earnings gap up. So we know these were on weekly. And I am going to adjust them a little bit because now that I'm zoomed in, I'm actually going to bookend this range. So I want to kind of see when I have them that close together, they're $1.50 apart on a ticker that's trading in this range. It'll give me a heads up that there is some congestion in here that I need to pay attention to. And I'm also going to add 164 on daily. Now, one of the things that happens when you're marking up a chart like this is you zoom out and it's just a mess. So you want to be careful that every once in a while you are just turning that off and going, okay, what are we doing? So now we're going to look at it in relation to where we are on daily. Very likely for us to come back and test the 10 daily moving average, which is our volume point of control. That's the red line on this monthly for May, which is 165.40. So now we'll turn the lines back on and say, what's at 165.40? This range that we identified with volume using the VRVP. And I like that kind of confluence. So now I know this right here is really what I want to watch. The interaction from 164 to 165 in our near term if we have a pullback. I'm not saying you should short this. I will say that this is short covering. If we look at it in relation to those that took speculative long entries kind of back in here, looking at how it's interacted, you almost have to start taking profit. And as they start taking profit, the shorts come in and then they're covering, buying themselves back up to their cost basis, which is right here, this high volume node. So a really good way to look at those higher time frame charts. Oh yeah, Hamdan, I keep banning them. Do me a favor. I'll catch them at the end of this. So let's see. I got Google for Sam posted in the thread. Jackie asks, which indicator is it that you have on TradingView for volume profile next to the candles? So that's PVP, periodic volume profile, on the monthly is this right here. That's showing me our value area, which is value area high, value area low. Let me turn off the lines. So the blue is value area high and low, and then volume point of control. So it does the same thing the VRVP does, but you can code it daily, monthly, weekly timeframes. And that I will have all of those links uploaded just in case you can't find it. Looks like our wick underneath that IB high on ES is getting bought up with a failure to get anywhere near overnight high, RTH open, the CPI low I had marked from, I think it was last month, and anchored VWAP. Good times. Okay, perfect. That looks like we caught all the tickers. So I'm hoping this is a good kickoff for those of you that haven't seen us go through this. And Thor and I come from very different backgrounds, but it's interesting to see, even with different backgrounds, how a lot of times we'll hit the same levels and we just both talk about why we're seeing them. So hoping that it helps you guys. That's why we take the time to do it. And I really appreciate you being here. It means a lot. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you on Voice here shortly.